We started in March 2017 with the vision of me and my wife Lisa, telling the life and legacy of Harriet Tubman in the area where she was enslaved and born. So once I found that information out, we structured a tour in that avenue with half-day, full-day itineraries. Now these tours take you to some significant places like Bucktown, where she was injured, the Courthouse Farm, and so on. So it really takes you back into time where these events actually happened during the antebellum years, where slavery was an institutional, legal institution in the state of Maryland that enslaved the people of color. Welcome to the Dorchester County Courthouse right behind me. This is the site of the slave auctions. This is where for hundreds of years that the slaves actually came in from the dreaded Middle Passage and from the coast of Africa. There are two documented trips here in Dorchester County where we are standing actually came here. As we're talking about Harriet Tubman in this narrative, we would know that Harriet Tubman would be born in Dorchester County. Her mother, Harriet, would be born here in Dorchester County, but her grandmother would have came in on a slave ship. Also right here at this courthouse, this is where Harriet Tubman orchestrated her first rescue attempt. She would not be here like on a lot of her journeys. She would not be on site, but she would be in Philadelphia, have been emancipated herself at this time. She got word that her niece Keziah Boley and her two children were going to be sold at this very courthouse. She wanted to come back here, but she was connected inside of this underground railroad system, this network of freedom, through a very important gentleman by the name of William Still. Mr. William Still made it possible through the Underground Railroad, the network of freedom, for them to be escaped from this place right here and taken down to the wharf that's down the street, and they gained their freedom. Most of the escapes from this point happened by boat. Also here, a man by the name of Sam Green received 10 years at this very courthouse, this jail, for owning a book by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and that was anti-slavery material. So with the courthouse, this is a place of families being broken up, the actual selling of the African American people, and also where Harriet Tubman actually orchestrated her first rescue attempt.
My biggest dream is working on a curriculum for grades 1 through 12. Well, I have a little different story from my husband. I didn't really study history, didn't know a whole lot about it. So when he started talking about the tours and he wanted to put the tours together, and he been sharing with me about history for ever since we've been married, which is over 20 years, and I didn't realize that so much information was here. So instead of me being embarrassed about not knowing my history and just everything that I have learned so far, I want to be able to share it. So with that, for our future, I look forward to having a curriculum for elementary students, middle school students, and high school students. I'm hoping that the first part of it, I can do it in 2021. I'm putting myself out there, I'm stretching myself. Probably going to be something virtual first, just kind of try out. Like he said in the beginning, he thought of the tours, and it was just something that, maybe a group of people would say, hey, do you think that you would share this with your children? So 2021.
We're standing on the lane of the Courthouse Farm. This very lane behind me would be the lane going up to the big house. What I mean by the big house is where Robert Broadus actually lived. The story here is hallowed ground. And this is where the two sisters of her were sold from. This is also where Harriet was hired out as a young girl to different farms in the area. This very lane would be traveled back and forth with Harriet Tubman herself, this very ground. Her father, Ben, would come here and visit his children right here on the Broadus farm. And as you go down this road down here a little ways and go around the bend, that's actually where the house was. Now, this place right here also is where Harriet Tubman married her first husband, John Tubman. He was a free black man in this community, meaning he was born free. Also, this is where she really came to terms with the terrible institution of slavery. What I mean by that, she found out that this was not fair and equal treatment to her as a human being. She would pray that something would happen to change her situation on this farm. And it would. Robert Broadus would die on this farm, her owner, at a young age. At that time, when that happened, the man that owned her would actually have to transition the property over to somebody else, which would be his wife. The farm was so heavily indebted that she could not do anything besides sell off property, which at that time, the people of color, African Americans, were. Before that happened, Dr. Thompson, the owner of Ben, her father, Dr. Anthony Thompson, came and purchased this very property. He then moved them into another part of the state in Caroline County, and that's where the actual escapes happened. So here, the road that started the journey to freedom. This is the Webb cabin, belonged to a free black man by the name of James Webb. Now, the interesting thing about this location is that he was free and his wife and children were enslaved. They would have to leave this location from time to time to go to the actual owner of them in this area. Now, this is a one-room Hugh log home that has been restored. Actual location. This incredible house would house the family of James, his wife, and his 3 children. As you go inside, you will see the awesome hiding spot underneath the floor. Now, Mr. Webb was an Underground Railroad operative. This free African-American man would help along with the Underground Railroad system. And you feel a sense of urgency here. You feel a sense of protection here. You also feel the sense of terror here. Meaning that any time, day or night, your very freedom that you work for could be challenged at the stroke of a pen. Meaning, even though you were emancipated, didn't always guarantee your freedom for life. One wrong move, one thought, one action, one deed against this unfair, unjust system, slavery, would cause you your freedom. We set ourselves apart, not by color or race or anything like that, but telling in the story from an aspect of reality, dealing with the things around us. The tour companies that were here before, and there's still some here, they didn't dig into the history, I would say. They would include the civil rights since 1960s in this area, a church that Frederick Douglass installed. At best, that what my analogy is, Harriet Tubman wasn't the main topic, the drive, and that set us apart and always has set us apart from what we do, because we tell a life and legacy of her. So when you come, of course it's Harriet Tubman, but it's also her father, Ben Rawls, her brother, Henry and Mose, her mother, the farm where she escaped. I mean, so it's so many other aspects that ties into this tour system that makes it so much a reality right in your backyard, basically. This is the Thompson Farm or Thompson Plantation. This is where Harriet and her mother and father were enslaved. This is the place where she came back countless of times to rescue family and friends. Now, her objective at first was her family, her mother and father, and her brothers and his sisters that remained. She had already had 2 sisters sold south, but she did make a journey during the holiday season of Christmas to come back and rescue her brothers. She would come back to this very location, down this very lane, to make this escape. Now, her father, Ben, who at this time was still a very important black man in this area, he ran a sawmill not far away from here. He was very, very well thought of by his owner at the time, Dr. Thompson. So he would be what you would call a supervisor in today's terms, but of course without the recognition. At this very lane, she would come down, go up to the big house, hide in the corn crib, which is still on the property, waiting for the correct time or the proper time to leave. Also, in her last journey here, she would rescue her father and mother. And it's a picture that Mark Priest has done with her on a 1-axle cart and her mother and father leaving this place. Now, she would leave from here, Pennsylvania, New York, and she would extremely go up to Canada, because at this time, the fugitive slave law was enacted. That means even Pennsylvania and New York wasn't even free. That meant the people could come, the slave catchers and different ones could come to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and grab you and take you into bondage and sell you down south. They wouldn't know where you came from, but all their job was to just gather up as many emancipated people or free people as they could and take them down south and sell them for a profit. This jewel of a place right here at the very lane when Harriet Tubman came up is very special because of the simple fact this is where the journey began. This is where it all started. This is where she came back to several times to help along with the freedom seeking. So the Thompson Farm would be owned by a wealthy doctor, Dr. Anthony Thompson. He would be the person that owned Ben, Harriet, and the children. She would escape from here on her first journey and then to the mill and to the Leverton house on the way to journeying for freedom. The Lanchester Mill, an 18th century grist mill, meaning flour mill, that was here during Harriet Tubman's time. This is the actual place that Harriet Tubman would have met the Levertons. The Levertons were Quakers and lived about 300 yards from here up the creek. So this place right here would be like your modern day lumber yard or your grocery store, where all of the people would come around and bring products here. They would be free, enslaved, all in this area. And this was the perfect opportunity for the sympathizers to be able to contact the ones that wanted freedom. You can imagine Harriet meeting the Levertons here, getting the information on how to gain her freedom. She would gain her freedom, make it here, go to their house, and she would be moved from their house to Delaware. You can imagine and feel the vibes of Harriet Tubman being on this ground. Huntington Creek, one of the routes to freedom. After you would make it to the mill, you would be instructed to get to the creek, Huntington Creek. This creek runs north. It also runs by the sympathizers' houses like Hannah and Jacob Leverton. So it would be told, if you get in the creek and go against the current flow, you are heading to freedom. If you went with the flow, you are going back into slavery. So this is one of the routes itself that runs straight north. They would use this to break the scent of the actual slave catchers. So they would get in and out of this creek and they would lose the scent going to freedom. We're in the location where the escapes happened, right here at the mill. Harriet herself in these areas right here would come back and lead people with these directions to this creek, to this very creek we're standing at right now. This is where it happened at. This is where she journeyed to freedom, Huntington Creek.
Oh, I'm excited about the great opportunities that lie before us. This pandemic happened for a reason, and all things have happened for a reason. If we look back in history, we've been through a lot more worse in this country than what's going on. It's adaptability that's the key in this. I'm looking forward to sharing this opportunity as we come out in this pandemic, being able to show people that it's not as bad as it seems, because it's been worse. So look for more of a positive side of, hey, this is a time where we can unify even more without indifferences, move forward, and be productive in society. If you look back in the past and you try to rationalize what happened and try to apply it to what's going on now, you're going to get something that's really muddy. It's not going to be pliable to use. But if you use the opportunity to grow on, you take that and you say, okay, we don't need to do this no more. We don't need to go down this dead-end street anymore. We need to use this to move forward. I look forward to helping people be happy. I look forward to working with people in education, giving them some information, positive lights. You're always going to have something. Negative is going to be there forever. It's not going anywhere. It's the plus side that we have to work on to make things more pliable to our lives. For our kids, our grandkids, it's going on. You know, we're not going to be here forever, so we got to make sure that we leave something that's going to be positive for the ones that are passing the baton, and make sure you give them something that's clean. Give them something that they can use. Everybody's not going to speak well of you, but they can say something, and just take yourself out of it. Give them something that they can use, then use it and give it to somebody else.